Hello and welcome to See This If. My name is Ben Lewis and today we are looking at the Equalizer 2. In 2014 we saw Denzel Washington join the band of merry men that is Old Men Action Heroes. He plays the part of Robert McCall in The Equalizer, and it has sprinkles of Jason Bourne and John Wick, but Denzel, being the fine actor that he is, makes it his own. The Equalizer wasn't a bad movie, but it wasn't a great one either, and so it surprised me when 4 years later they announced that there would be a sequel to this film. Did it need one? No, but here it is anyway. The Equalizer is actually based on an 80s television show starring Edward Woodward, and I do love saying that name. Robert McCall is a character who fakes his own death so that he can lead a more quieter life, and in this quieter life he decides to help out people who need it, particularly the ones that are in his community. In The Equalizer 2, the story is pretty much the same thing. However, his past starts to catch up with him. That would be the whole story. However, the Equalizer decides to have a side story which ties in towards the end. That side story is about a young man who is dangerously close to entering a criminal life. So that's the basic story in The Equalizer 2. There's a lot more layers to it, but that's giving it quite a lot of credit where credit's not really due. I'll talk about the story in just a moment, but one thing that always niggles me is I do like Denzel Washington as an actor, but he does come across a little bit self-righteous in each of his roles, and that does tend to be a little bit annoying. A hero can have its flaws and you can be wrong, and that can make you human. And I found that in a lot of Denzel Washington movies he doesn't get that. People will be screaming at me saying, "What about Training Day? He plays the bad guy." Yeah, and he plays a very good one at that. He deservedly got the Oscar. "What about Flight? You haven't mentioned Flight." Yeah, that's true. It was a very good performance. In fact, I admire Flight because that was Denzel Washington coming out of his shell and trying something different to his other roles. But most of his roles do tend to lean on the self-righteous guy who never seems to be wrong. Back to The Equalizer 2, its 2 hours running time feels just slightly a bit longer because the story moves at a plodding pace. And that's what kind of surprises me when it gets to the third act. The third act is set in a hurricane. Don't worry, I won't spoil anything more. It doesn't warrant spoiling, but that's the way it goes, and it just feels a little bit out of place. It suddenly goes from trawling at 15 miles per hour to suddenly being turned up to 80 miles per hour, and I'm not entirely sure where that came from. The third act feels very much like the film in general, slightly out of place. I wasn't really expecting a sequel to The Equalizer. I understand how movies work in terms of its business. If the movie makes a decent enough return, then they will say, "Do you fancy doing a sequel?" And if the filmmakers fancy doing a sequel, then of course there would be. And of course I understand The Equalizer is based on a television series and there's a lot of source material there to deal with and mix that all up. In fact, this story feels more suitable to a very long TV episode rather than something that you would go in the cinema to go and watch. But it just doesn't do it for me. There's a lot of little stories going on here in the film which can be a little bit difficult to keep track of because some sort of are self-contained and end and that's it, and some are interlinked into the bigger main story. So you're kind of wondering, what are they trying to prioritise and everything like that. It's a little bit of a mess for my taste in a movie. I like my movie to be a bit more streamlined. And that's what I appreciated about the first one, which I also watched recently, just in case this film tied back to the first one. And I preferred the first one just because it felt a little bit more straight to the point. See this if you have seen the first Equalizer way back in 2014 or since then. You may disagree with a lot of the points that I've just made because you enjoyed it a whole lot more than I did, and that's fair enough. This film probably does have a lot of good qualities. It's just not one that I would recommend or even remember in months to come. Here's to 2022 and Equalizer 3, which will come out of nowhere. Please like, share and subscribe to my YouTube and Facebook channels. All the support that you give me is greatly appreciated, and I'm going to be bringing a lot more content to you in the near future. Bye bye for now.